Right.
Everybody, welcome to the video presentation of this week's edition of Say What. I'm Jason Klaus. I am the producer and, well, the founder of the PFC Entertainment Network. And you're seeing this at the start of this episode because we ran into a little bit of a snafu in post-production. And with it, I had to collaborate with the host of the show, the one and only Kristin Watt. And she made no bones about the fact that this was an important topic. A lot went into the recording, the filming of it, based on the guests that were on this episode and the topic that she tackles. Now, in post-production, and this is me kind of peeling the curtain back a little bit, we don't know how things are going to lay out until they are uploaded to the software. Now, our good friends over at Skype decided to show that they had something of a sense of humor. And with that, Kristin's individual presentation on this show may be a little awkward at times. And it's nothing that she did. It's just the way, because we had so many people on the panel and the way that Skype will organize their individual boxes. That's why it looks the way that it did. But it was important to maintain the integrity of the show, and especially for the guests that join her on this very special episode. So that's why we're doing this here today. So yeah, it's going to look a little weird. It's going to look a little awkward. But the good news is I have figured out what the problem is, and going forward, this particular snafu will not be something that we have to encounter in post-production moving forward. But we are here for you. We want to make sure that we put everything out on the table so nobody is like, what in the hell is going on here? That's technology. Sometimes it works for us, sometimes it doesn't. So with that, we hope that you will enjoy this very special episode of Say What here on the PFC Entertainment Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Say What. I am Kristin Watt. I am a wife, a mom, a community advocate, and apparently I'm a podcast host now. So anyway, I'm so happy you're here and you're joining us for another episode, and I am really excited about today's content. The goal of our show is always to share stories that unite, heal, and inspire. And that's a pretty big umbrella. We talk about all kinds of subjects. And today I have two very special guests with me, of course, along with Jason Klaus, the founder of the PFC Entertainment Network, which we are pleased to be a show on. And it's going to be a cool episode. We always want to share stories because everyone has one. And I think that's what really unites us. And I don't know, it's our common humanity. It's the way we can figure things out and understand each other. And one of the most underrepresented populations is our young people. They get a bad rap. I know when I was young, I got a bad rap. They thought we were going to ruin the world. And my focus is that I think these kids are changing the world. And my children, I have a 21 and a 14-year-old, and I think they're both very much a part of that, that Gen Z generation. They're not just making good trouble, but they're actually like education is a priority, and like helping people, going through your lived experience, your pain, whatever it is you've been through, and actually doing something with that is productive to make the world a better place. We think of adults as people who do that, and really I'm seeing young people every day doing this, and they're kind of putting the adults to shame. I got to step up my game, Jason. Which is sad because I've been busy. Like I've been busy for a few years, but I feel like these kids put me to shame. But anyway, that being said, I'm so excited today. Just to, Jason, I'm going to bring you in here early because let's talk about it. You've met some of I have a lot of people in my life, and many of them are young people. And I always count it a privilege and a blessing that somehow kids think I'm cool, or young people think I'm cool, or whatever. They tolerate me, if nothing else. But, I don't remember really, I always had like a favorite teacher. It was like, there was like the one person, like the one cool adult in my life when I was a teen and in my young 20s. But now I feel like maybe our generation, I mean, we're only a couple years apart, so I could speak for you and I, Jason, but like, I feel like we grew up in that time where, I mean, society, social issues, all of it, like really all the work that was done before us really started to come to fruition, and we lived that out. And then we raised kids. And that's what this generation is the kids we've raised,
right.
The people of our age group. And so I'm really not surprised that they're more evolved than we ever were. And we thought we were smart as hell, so, I don't know, but the Act Up kids that started the theater company, you got to know them and build a relationship with them. Like, that's just a small handful, but they're amazing kids. And now I've got two more amazing young people on here today, and there's plenty more where that came from, but I'm just really excited. Do you have hope for the future with these kids?
For the longest time, I made mention that I was concerned, because it seemed like there was just so much emphasis put on what was going wrong, that the ones that were actually trying to do something for the right reasons were being muted. They were being overshadowed because our society has shifted to a more controversial type of aura, because that's what sells. Mm-hmm. Controversy sells, right?
Right.
So, the younger demographic, like our kids, and this is what puts us in the spotlight. How do we raise our children? Because they are a direct reflection of us. You get kids out there that are, purposely trying to buck the system just for the sake of bucking the system, not for anything else. Well, that puts on full display a lack of attention, a lack of teaching these people how to conduct themselves as adults. Now, my kids, your kids, the Act Up kids, these are ones that, they are inspired because they have positive role models, whether it be us, whether it be a teacher, whether it be something. But, for the longest time, I was like, man, we are in some deep, deep trouble. But I met the Act Up kids, and I talked to other guests that you've had on your show here, and I can honestly say that there are glimmers of hope for our future. And the more time that they have to try to be right in the world, their light is starting to glow more and more, and it's starting to eclipse the darkness of controversy.
I think so. And you know what I think is also really telling, and we're going to dive right into it here in just a moment, but do you remember, I don't know, I don't know, because my parents were a little different with me than I think some of the other like kids in my life when I was growing up. But one of the things I do know for sure, and I talk to people, let's say I'm 41, so let's just say age 38 to 50 right now, people in that age group today. We grew up where kids were kind of seen, not heard. You don't know your shit. Sit down, take a seat. Do what we say. Here's why. It's because I said so. There was no actual explanation. I feel like there was not conversations being had. Like, I swear to you, I thought I came from a pollinated bee and a flower. That was how it was presented to me when I asked about reproduction. But you know what I mean? We just didn't, but our parents didn't have, there was no conversations, not about sexuality, not about true, a lot of those women of that time didn't have checkbooks and stuff. You know what I mean? So I feel like as society shifts and rights, personal human rights shifted, the society shifted, and then the way we were having conversations with our children changed. And now I can't speak for every parent in my age group, but I can speak for me. both of my daughters and my bonus kid, we've talked about everything. Nothing's off limits, absolutely nothing. And we don't put shame and taboo around it. And we talk about it for the importance that it is. And then I've been privileged to raise some empowered young people in my house, but there's also guidance. So you can't just tell people what to do. Now you're showing guidance. And I've been given a privilege to somehow be kind of a mentor, or at least one of those trusted, safe adults in a lot of young people's lives. And I never intended to be that. I just was. And I feel like a lot of people I know from very diverse backgrounds and schools of thought all kind of have this similar experience with their children's friends. You know what I mean? So I think it's good and I think that's something to be said for this Gen Z generation, though, is that they have been able to have adult conversations. And we're going to hop in here with my guest, Jaden, here in a second. And I know many of the adults that Jaden knows, and the time and the investment that they have put into their life, to support. And I think that is really a generational shift here, where adults really weren't doing that 20, 30 years, not in the same way. You know what I mean? So I have a lot of hope. So we're going to deep dive right into this. I am so excited to have my guest today. So my first guest is my friend Jaden. And Jaden, for anyone listening, so this is broadcast across everywhere. This isn't just here in Michigan, but I do have a lot of listeners who are Go Blue, and today we're going to be Go Green. That's what we're going to do, because Jaden just moved into Michigan State University. So he's a Spartan, they are a Spartan, and Jaden, let me give a brief introduction for our listeners, and then I cannot wait to hear from you. You are such an inspiration to me. And I know you will be to those that listen to this episode. So Jaden is a resident of Rochester Hills, Michigan, but currently at Michigan State in Lansing. And they are actually a passionate LGBTQ plus rights advocate. Jaden identifies as gay and non-binary and uses they, them pronouns, and has spent the last few years standing up to bigotry and discrimination. And as a recent graduate of Rochester Adams High School, they led the Adams High School GSA as president, also forming LGBTQ plus clubs district-wide and contributing to LGBTQ plus related discussions. Jaden is also the founder and executive director of Forever Pride, the co-founder and president of Forever Pride Action, which we'll get into the difference between those in a little bit. And is now they are the legislative director for the Michigan chapter of Voters of Tomorrow, and their commitment to activism persists as they are entering their freshman year at MSU and strive for an inclusive and equal LGBTQ plus future. So Jaden, welcome. Thank you for being on my little old podcast today. I'm so excited that you're here.
Yeah, and thank you so very much for having me. I'm really excited to just, discuss a little bit who I am and, just talk about, really, just the importance of young people and, the change in the work that we're doing right now in society.
I am so excited. I'm just so excited. So I do want to say, Jaden, you and I have known each other technically, a year, maybe two?
Yes.
Something like that.
It's funny because, we just started September, and we around the time we first started talking was around early July, because that was around the time when I was getting stuff together to start, of course, my first organization, Forever Pride. And how we really met it was during that time, and the context with that was, when I was starting, all these cool things I was, beginning on last year, one of the biggest problems I had personally was I didn't know anyone. I didn't really have any contacts or people who could maybe guide me on the process, because, especially when starting a new organization, it can be very intimidating, especially with someone who had no knowledge at the time. So, I was asking for names, like, do you think anyone, do you know anyone who maybe, has knowledge and maybe starting up pride events and, getting stuff together for their community, or has just some knowledge just within organizing. And, your name was one of the first names that was sent to me, and I was like, well, we'll just find her on Facebook and we'll just send her a friend request and we'll just call her up and we'll see what happens with that. And that's where our relationship really started. And it was, I believe, the first week of July of last year where we had our first conversation with her.
So much has happened since then. Oh my God. And do you want to hear something funny, since this is a also whimsical and funny show too? Like, we're funny here, not just serious. I'm going to be totally honest with you. That first phone call you and I ever had, I was sitting in the bathtub, literally sitting in the bathtub. I remember it vividly. I was like, who's this kid? What's going on? I don't know. Like, cause I was sitting in the bathtub. We are closed here. This is a family show. I'm just letting you know. But that was the first time we met. Like, and then we were like Facebook friends forever. And then tell me that when I just saw you recently in Rochester, that wasn't the first time we were in person together, was it?
That was the first time in person.
Oh my God, how sad. And I guarantee you, we're going to go deep dive into your story, but I guarantee you now, in just 1 year, the amount of people that you have met and connected with, time has no meaning anymore. You're like, did I meet you? Did I not meet you? Like, you're in organized chaos, just perpetual state of it when you're starting and founding and then getting people together for collective action. Like, it's just, it's really hurting cats. It really is. So, okay, that's sad, but I did get to hug you, and I loved watching you in action when I saw you, because you were just in a clipboard and we're all over the place and hobnobbing with Jocelyn Benson and whatever. It was so great to watch. It was like Mama Bear pride, even though it wasn't you're not mine, but it's still a point of pride. So I love it.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So, okay. Jaden, tell us a little bit first, though. Obviously, I just introduced a lot of, the organizations and stuff that you helped found and develop, and we'll definitely get into that, because it's never, the vision is always a person that has a vision, but then you find that you cannot do anything on your own. And I know so many wonderful people that have supported you and this organization, but I'd like to know a little bit about, just briefly, if you would, like, tell us a little bit about your background and your story, like growing up and like how you got to this moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you got to hear a little bit about it at Pride in the Park this year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of why I do any of the stuff I do has really centered around my childhood and just my past overall. I mentioned, and of course this, Kristin, is that I was raised in a very evangelical, conservative Christian household, where there was no discussions on identities or sexual orientations, and it especially having dealing with parents who of course are, and unfortunately still are very homophobic or transphobic, and refuse to acknowledge that the LGBTQ plus community exists. It really is hard, and dealing with a lot of that that past trauma. That is what really did motivate me to do a lot of the work I do, with, especially when, our organization, one of our organizations in Rochester, Forever Pride, we held our Pride Prom this year, the first time ever in our area. And one reason why we even did that was because, especially with, my mindset with, anything related to activism, is that ultimately I just want, people, especially LGBTQ youth, who maybe have had the same experiences as me in my past, where they don't have supportive parents or they don't have supportive environments, to just feel welcomed and accepted and just to feel loved in their communities. So that is really, why I do any of it, is because, I am now an adult. I just turned 18 a few months ago, and my childhood is over now. I am in college. But, there are many people who are younger than me who are still dealing with a lot of unfortunate things in their life. And my goal ultimately is just to make sure that people are just loved, and they know that there are people in their communities that a majority of them do support them. So that is a little bit, why I do any of this stuff. And even now, as a college freshman, I'm just continuing to make change and just, strive for a better future. And I know you mentioned it in the beginning of the podcast, but which is, our generation really is about just change now. And, unfortunately, the news is always about the negatives, with, the environment, or with, all the unfortunate incidents of gun violence recently. Like, it is just a non-stop in the news cycle, negative, negative, negative. And sometimes, especially, with other generations, it seems like there's no hope left, but I genuinely do believe that Gen Z is that hope. And I am convinced that, at least in the next few years, that we are going to be able to reverse a lot of the, the damage that's been happened by, individuals that are hateful, or to reverse a lot of, the negative things that are being pushed by the media right now.
I'm so impressed. Always impressed every time you speak. Let me ask you another question. So obviously you talked a little bit about your home life, which this is not uncommon for many LGBTQ plus youth. And I will tell you that this episode today was really not necessarily focused on that specifically. Like, I didn't plan it this way, but sometimes the universe just aligns and the right people are where they're supposed to be at the right time. And we're going to speak with my friend Fritz later too, and a little bit different experience than you had in a supportive home, but also a different story and a different reason why they are on the show. But I love that both of you are actually the ones that were on the show today. Like, just to have that commonality, because, I don't know that I've really shared it on this show, but people in my daily life know, I am not a part of the LGBTQ plus community. Like, I don't identify that way, but I do have so many friends and family members and child that does. And so long before that, though, like, it was just part of human rights for me. You know what I mean? Like, it was everybody. And so this is just an issue that I am so passionate about, obviously. And I just work with so many people. So it's just great to see the work coming out of the young people who aren't just going back into the closet and being depressed. They're like taking back their communities and their rights and fighting for change, and for a better place. Like, you're actually thinking about that next generation and those kids right after you. And just that empathy is like, it's so needed and impressive. Can you share with me, aside from your home life though, like before you kind of like got into doing this through your school and then outside of the school, so outside of home, but also in school, like, have you experienced, discrimination, bullying, like whatever, like, did you have the same experience at school as you felt like not being supported quite like you should, or felt you should have been at home too? Or did you feel like very supported at school when you started these organizations?
Yeah, so I can, answer those questions. So, I think one thing I always like emphasizing to people, as well as, I am, of course, not just LGBTQ, I am, of course, also Asian. And, being part of two minority groups, it really is, it casts an even more interesting light, because, already being Asian, I've dealt with my good fair share of racism, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to mention one thing that happened literally, like, I think 2 days before my school closed, of course, when the COVID outbreak happened, and of course our school started entering lockdown during March of 2020. I had one person go up to me and said I was to blame for spreading the virus in our hometown of Rochester Hills. And it's already dealing with racism as an Asian American, but also when I first came out, it really clicked in how being LGBTQ also unfortunately led to that. I believed I was blessed with a very with wonderful teachers and wonderful administrators at our school district level, where our school district overwhelmingly is very supportive, and that's a huge reason why I was able to do a lot of the stuff I did as GSA president. But unfortunately, of course, dealing with my home life, and of course dealing with the very small minority of members of our community who just love to show off their hateful views to the LGBTQ plus community, just anyone who's different from them. It can be very stressful at times, where even at school, I still unfortunately hear a lot of negative things. When I first became GSA president, we had flyers up against a wall, and I would hear a lot of nasty things that I will not repeat on the show against our club. But I always mention, yes, there's a lot of people who are hateful, but they are just a really small minority. I always emphasize to people, they are just crazy loud. And I believe,
Yes.
I know you mentioned this before, but like, being especially at Pride in the Park this year, seeing so many community members, especially people I've known, for example, like you, there's a lot of people who I've been, friends on Facebook, or I've had calls with you, but I've never met you in person. And just meeting a lot of people like you and for the first time in person, and just seeing how supportive people really are and how you guys really do outnumber that minority. It reassured me that, society, at least the majority of it is supportive. But yeah, that answers your question.
Yeah, well, and you know what? I'm actually really glad you brought up intersectionality, because that is something that I personally, like in my daily conversations and any of the work that I've ever done outside of this podcast, it's really the focus. It's always mentioned at anything, at any event, any speech. It's always talked about, because I remember very clearly the day I discovered what that meant. And that was like a long time ago. And it seemed so clear when I understood it, but I was like, I never thought about it, but that's my privilege, right? Like that's my, okay, so for anyone listening to the show, if you don't know what intersectionality means, it's simply, Jaden literally just explained it. They are Asian, which is a minority group, and then also LGBTQ+. There's two. This would apply to, example, Black trans women. They are already suffer certain discrimination and things like that for being a woman, for being a Black woman, and now for being particularly maybe a gay or trans Black woman. So there's like the layers of the onion, that you have to overcome, and it's not just the one thing. So it's really, it just makes so much sense to me. Like, I hope it makes sense to our listeners, like what each person is really going through and what they have to overcome and deal with on a daily basis. And it's not just the one thing, and then when you group them all together, now it's like, it's a shit show sometimes, like just trying to exist. And so I think there's just so much, it was very much on, I'll use Jason's words, full display. I'm going to start honing my Jason Klaus terms on full display when I saw you recently, and just the amount of love and support, and man, the organizations you had out there. Oh my God. You had MDOT and freaking, I don't even remember. There was like so many large organizations represented in Rochester Pride. I was just like, I was so impressed. Because I know what it's like to try to pull an event of that magnitude together. Jason actually came to Holly Pride, and they did he podcasted live from our most recent one. And so you kind of got to see what all that took to put that on. And Rochester is a much more large and, kind of suburban area as opposed to our rural area. So it's a little different. But I was very proud of you, and I thought it was a great success. Can you tell me though, so you had to deal with stuff at home, you had to deal with stuff at the school, and now then you you were the president of the GSA club, but then Forever Pride happened, and now Forever Pride Action, which just launched 2 weeks ago or something. And then now you are also where are you at? I wrote it down. Where did I put it? For the Michigan chapter of the Voters of Tomorrow. Yeah, I want to hear a little bit about that, because I'm excited to hear about that. So, but can you tell me a little bit about Forever Pride Action? Like, this is a newer, larger endeavor that you guys are working on.
Yeah, definitely. And I can, of course, talk about Forever Pride Action and Voters of Tomorrow. So starting with Forever Pride Action, of course, it's been mentioned on this podcast now, where last year around this time, I started Forever Pride, which was supposed to be the main organization that would be in charge of hosting our Pride events in the area of Rochester and Rochester Hills. So that includes our Pride Prom that we held this year, and of course the annual Rochester Pride that we renamed to Pride in the Park this year. So that was the intended goal. And my vision at the time last year was, Forever Pride will be the main organization that, when we don't have events, when Pride Month is over, we can just focus on doing, activism. But things have changed, and things will always change, and they keep changing, and new things happen and new things arise. As especially around July-ish, this year I was really realizing, it was very limited of what Forever Pride could do, because Forever Pride, we're still pending 501c3
Yeah. So
nonprofit
you're
status.
limited in your activism.
Yeah, so that would very limit the work we want to do. And I'm not sure how much you know about the things going on in our district this year, but we've had a lot of homophobia, unfortunately, arise this year, and things were really changing at a rapid pace where I never thought we would need to have these discussions again, but they were coming back in full force, where we need to educate the community again, or our elections are becoming more contentious now because we have people who are openly homophobic use that as their platform as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was around middle of July this year where I started suggesting and floating the idea around that maybe we need to start something new. We need to start a new branch organization of Forever Pride, where that organization can just focus on Pride events only, while Forever Pride Action can take the reins with hosting events that can really help the community, hosting support groups for the LGBTQ plus community, because we don't have many in this North Oakland area, or of course also making sure we help get LGBTQ officials or individuals or pro LGBTQ individuals elected to office, because ultimately also the issues in your area are also decided by the people who are in power and who are leading your government, either local or federal or state. So that is what.
Now, is the action is a 501c4? Then.
So yeah, we are intending on filing our 501c4 status around December this year. Like I said, we just started and we just launched like around 2 weeks ago. So we are still getting things together. It's been crazy, but ultimately my vision for Forever Pride Action was that this is going to be, sort of everything I wanted with Forever Pride, but now redirected here, where we are going to be able to really provide that support that's needed here, because, and I know you are up in Holly, of course, and that, our area of North Oakland, it is a very interesting area. And of course, when you look at, what we have here, Rochester Hills, of course, Northern Macomb County, with, Romeo in Shelby Township, and of course up from where you guys are, Holly, Ortonville, Lake Orion, Oxford, these areas, they are, there is a large majority who are not necessarily supportive to the LGBTQ plus community or ideas of that nature. So we needed something here in this area, because one of the things that really did lead me to start this new organization was it was during Pride in the Park, and we had a woman ask one of our team members, are there any maybe LGBTQ support groups, maybe for someone who isn't in the school system, because we had GSA, so they could just go there if they were in the school system, and they're already graduated from college, so of course the colleges wasn't an option. They are just an adult living their life in the city of Rochester Hills, and it's just any generic support group that they can just go up to. And one of the things that I hated telling them was that we do not have anything of that nature. You would have to drive down to Ferndale or somewhere more towards the Detroit area, where there are a lot of groups and organizations out there. And that really did kick off a light bulb, where I was like, wait, we really had nothing here in this more rural, conservative area of North Oakland. We need something here. So ultimately, I think with Forever Pride Action, especially when we, continue going with it next year, is that we're going to really want to provide that support structure in this area, and also, of course, really finally get the LGBTQ community in this area a platform where we are able to, of course, advocate for them and just speak on their behalf, because we desperately need that in this area that is so underrepresented.
I will say I agree with you. I do want to just say that this really, and I do know that there are so many other very important issues that matter to you aside from just this, but this is your calling right now. This is your lived experience, and you, I think, just hit the nail on the head, which is, this is kind of how I got involved in things up where I live. Is someone's like, hey, we need a thing. Is there a thing? And we're like, oh crap, there's not a thing. And you just have to create a path where there was none. And the great thing about that journey, which you have a lot of support to do, is one, that you recognized it, two, that you did something about it, and three, you're going to drop seeds all along the way, because in 5 years, 10 years, you didn't know a year ago that you'd be doing this, right? Well, now you're off at college and you're at Michigan State, which is A, great school, B, you have people from all over the world represented. Like, you have a diverse community, you're going to have a new education, you're going to have clubs and experiences there on college campus that are going to take you into your adult life, but you will leave something behind in your community that invested in you, that will have it'll evolve, through the years, but you will have left that. And sometimes it's a thankless job and everyone knows who you are now. And in 20 years, they won't know who you were. But you know what? You probably somewhere along the line, lives got saved. People found healing, and they didn't give up. You know what I mean? Because of seeds that you planted from your own lived experience. And so that's really our hope in life. Like everywhere we go, right? Like just drop seeds everywhere you can and try to make it better for the next person. And hopefully they pick that up and they make it better for the next person. And that's hopefully how we change the world, right?
Definitely.
Like,
and
hopefully.
I think also for, I think it's just, and of course you relate to me on this because, we both do a lot of the same work with, Pride organization, is that, ultimately, a lot of the things that I do, I always remind myself that, you just need to make an impact for one person at least. Just one person was able to, for example, if they went to an event or you provide services that they utilized, as long as they felt an impact from that one thing you offered, nothing else matters. Just making an impact in just one person, that means the whole world. So I can move on now to a little bit about Voters for Tomorrow, because that is something that is still really relatively new. And, that's something where, I only just got thrown in that role as well. So we're just moving with the flow. So Voters for Tomorrow is a nationwide organization. It's a 501c4. It's, they have chapters in over 25 states and they have volunteers in all 50. And recently it's been in news because they actually held a summit in DC recently, where they invited former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and a lot of important officials within the White House and in the House of Representatives. So it was a really big deal. But they recently launched a Michigan chapter for us here in the state of Michigan. So we are still moving along. It's still we're still in that phase of just getting followers for our accounts and making sure that we are able to fill our board up, because we still have a lot of vacant seats. But sort of the premise of what we're going to be doing in that organization is really just a lot of change in pushing Gen Z issues and issues that affect Gen Z. Of course, Michigan is one of the perfect states to do that, because of course, we're a state that has, that's constantly talking about, issues such as the environment, such as, gun violence, such as abortion rights, and, of course, LGBTQ rights being one of them. And we are a state that is constantly evolving still. And, especially this year, we've seen the legislature passing so many different laws for different issues, that it is important that we have groups that continue to advocate for things that we as Gen Z care about. So that is why this is so exciting, because, there's a lot of potential with this. I'm currently the new legislative director for that group. So my job entails, making sure that our team is aware of what issues we should be focusing on at the time, as well as, advising our team on any potential legislation that's popping up that, could affect an issue that we're advocating for, and just keeping in contact with our lawmakers, both in Lansing and at the local level. So, but yeah, it is a whole new organization, and we are still in the process of building it up, but it is really exciting, and I look forward to seeing where that is going to go from here.
I am so excited for you, and this is important work that you're doing. And I'm just gonna say this: the mom in me right now is like, hopefully, if Jason's not sick of me by then, I'll still be doing the Say What podcast. But let's put a pin in that, and let's bring you back. I want to see a year from now. Definitely. What in the world is going on with you? And then maybe by the time you graduate college,
you hear that, Jason? We gotta do this next year.
Yeah, so I'm excited. We'll do an anniversary episode every year. How fun! 100%. So, Jaden, we're gonna shift for a moment over and introduce my other guest, Fritz, because I listened to everything that you just said, Jaden, and I feel all that, because I've been through a lot of that. Like, maybe not in the same organizations or the same thing, but I do understand what it's like to go from being an obscure citizen in your community to all of a sudden you're in charge of things, you are leading things, you are having to learn on the fly very quickly. and make the necessary adjustments. All of a sudden you're sitting in the room with lawmakers. Like, I've been that person, and it's overwhelming and it's a lot. And I will give you one solid piece of advice. Keep doing what you're doing, but absolutely take some time for some self-care, because burnout is real. And I went through that after like about 9. In fact, we literally, the episode that's going to drop tonight as we're recording this is very much talking about that, and seasons in your life, and recognizing when opportunities present themselves and you take advantage of them and you do the work you're supposed to do right then and there, and it's meaningful. And then all of a sudden when the next season comes around, you're like, who am I without that? You know what I mean? And you have to go in there and find who you are. Who's Jaden without all these hats? Because Jaden's changing as you're growing. Kristin was changing as she was growing, and it's taken me like 9 months to really like be okay with who I am today versus who I was 9 months ago. You know what I mean? And so the best advice I can give anyone who is doing any kind of work of servitude, because that's not just activism, that's doctors, it's nurses, it's teachers, it's people who are investing in the lives of others, somehow have to find balance in their own life, or you will just have nothing left to give. So go do all those things and kick ass doing them, but make sure that you learn to go, hey, 1 day a week, sorry, if I don't have some self-care, like, I'm gonna lose it, because you'll feel it. It'll happen if it hasn't happened already. So that's my mom wisdom to you, my activist mom wisdom to you, because I just love you and I want to see you succeed, and I know you will. So we're going to introduce Fritz. So this is so special to me, because we're gonna get into it, Fritz, but so Fritz's mother was my former boss. Like, that's how Fritz, when did I meet you? How old were you? 6, 7?
7,
8?
I think.
7
or 8.
7 years old. You're 16 now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I have, so Fritz wrote a book, okay? And I'm going to tell you, I read this book this week. It's a very easy read, because it's, oh, you got your book too. Look, there's our books. Everybody order this book. We'll have and by the way, we will have the link up on the page. It's called Dreams of a Better Life. And this book was written during an initial onset of mental illness. And you went through several psychiatric hospitalizations, and we're in a residential treatment facility. And one of your biggest coping skills was writing, right? Mm-hmm. And I was kind of looking through here, and I noticed, you know, you would get writing inspiration from music, previous books you've read during your inpatient treatment, and says here that you wrote passages about your experiences and your perception of your changing mental illness. And with these passages, you decided to go ahead and put this book together. So there's over 100 passages in this book. And this book does include talk about self-harm, suicide, disordered eating, and how you have lived through that experience and come out on this other side. Still always an ongoing thing to maintain, but this book, it's hard to, it's not like I've never read stuff like this before, but I know you, and I've known you since you were a child. And I know your family, and I love your family. So it's, this was very powerful and very real and very raw. And as we get into your story, I'm going to share with our listeners, I can't say that I had like a favorite passage, because they weren't like rhyming poems. It was just your story. I loved the way you put it together. But I do want to read this. And it was, it says, I'll do whatever possible. I'll go through the treatment. I'll stop self-harming. I'll never drink or do drugs. I'll do everything it takes. I need to get better. I know I do. Recovery is difficult. And I think of all of the ones I read, that was the one that was like, there's that moment of hope in the book. Like you start seeing the shift. So, anyway, you're also friends with my child, and so you're special. You're special to me for many reasons. Because I love your family, because I love you, and because I love my child's friends. So I love you for 3 different reasons. But most importantly, I want you to know that I love you because of this book, because this is who you are. Like, this is what you went through. And you wrote this to, I guess, as a therapeutic component for yourself. But then you went to the next step and got it published to hopefully help other people. At 16, that's pretty incredible. You know? So I want to talk about, if you're comfortable, and if there's anything you don't really want to talk about, you can let us know that too. But I want to go back to, at 16 years old, you come from a good parents, nice house, all the things. Your mom works in the mental health field. Like, you had all the tools. What is the first time that you remember struggling with your mental health? How old were you?
I was 10.
Do you want to elaborate on, like, kind of what that experience was when you felt like...
So when I was 10, I was in 5th grade, and I had this friend who was in 3rd grade. And I remember one night just, like, starting sobbing, because, like, I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't fall asleep. And then the next day I went to class, and my teacher told me, like, so-and-so died, like, my friend died. And I learned later that day that she killed herself. She was 8. And for weeks, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink. I was crying constantly. I didn't want to go to school. It was just a really hard period of my life.
It's traumatic. Like, I mean, losing a friend as an adult, I just went through this, a sudden death. It wasn't from suicide, it was from a heart attack. Right. But 40 years old, like, people aren't supposed to die at 40. They're certainly sure as hell not supposed to die at 8. Right. And by their own hand. That is, I feel like that child fell through the cracks somehow, know? So what for those listening, because we do have people with kids, of this age group that listen to the show. We also have young people that listen to the show. Obviously, that was a traumatic event for you. Do you, and I think there is a differentiation between going through something traumatic and maybe processing grief and going through some depression, but there's a difference between those feelings and a traumatic event actually sparking an underlying mental illness, and they're different. And so from there, I mean, obviously you were going through that trauma, and that was very hard for you. What were some of the symptoms that you were having that maybe your family or yourself felt like this was more than just grieving a friend?
The symptoms were, I would wake up my mom in the middle of the night because I couldn't stop crying and I didn't know what to do, and the not eating and the not being able to sleep. And then I remember one time, I think it was around the same time, I took a bath and I cut my fingers up. And then I ran to my mother in a towel, like I wasn't even dressed yet, and I said, like, I don't like my life.
When was the first time, how old were you when the first time that you experienced having to actually go and be inpatient in a hospital?
I was 14.
Okay. Now, when you wrote this book, I'm just curious. So this, was this over the course of numerous hospitalizations, or was this over the course of one longer term one, or like how many?
It was over the course it was over the course of my residential, but the stories that I wrote are all true and about my experience that I experienced over all of my hospitalizations. Gotcha.
So can you tell us a little bit about, because I will tell you that I literally just had this happen like 2 weeks ago. A very dear friend of mine, their teenage child also had an experience where they had to go through this kind of more intensely for the first time. and as someone who, your mom was my boss. So I worked at a inpatient mental health residential facility, and your mother was my boss. So I had this, and I call it a privilege every time I talk about this experience, because I was exposed to things and given education and lived like real life, real time experience to those who struggle to find their regulation again and independent living, who are struggling with severe mental illness. So I have a different, I've never understood how important those years were until 2 weeks ago. I pulled out every piece of knowledge I had ever sourced from so many amazing people, like to be able to help my friend go through this with their loved one, So in fact, I think I called your mom. But so for those who may not understand what a mental health a crisis looks like, where you require hospitalization, there's a stigma that surrounds not only mental illness, but also like, we don't use words anymore like the loony bin, or what I mean, like losing, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, or even when you use the word crazy doesn't, just because someone may have bipolar disorder doesn't mean they're crazy. Like, do you know what I mean? And so like changing the way we speak about mental illness space and the treatment for it, because there's a stigma in just going to get treatment. You know what I mean? So can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, I hate to say the pros and cons, but like what that looks like being inpatient in a hospital? Like, what does that, obviously you went through it and you came out of it. So what was that experience like for you?
So over the course of 9 months, I was in 11 hospitals. So I guess I would say the pros and cons. The pros are like, you always feel like someone's looking after you. Like, you're never really alone, which can also be a con because they have to watch you go to the bathroom, and that kind of sucks. But one of the cons is there's always someone who finds some way to self-harm in the hospital, and they tell you about it, and you either tell someone or be loyal, and it's hard to make that choice.
Yeah.
But the hospital I went to, the best one, my first hospitalization was Stonecrest. That was for psychosis. Mm-hmm. My other 10 were for self-harm and depression. I would say the best one I've been to is Havenwick, because they have like an actual cafeteria. They have good food. They treat you better. They're really nice staff. Most of the staff went through mental health issues. So, but if you really need stabilization, I say go to Stonecrest, because it's a higher risk facility, and they watch you a lot better. So it just depends on what you're going in for.
And I can't, it sounds weird for me to say that you're lucky, but you are lucky, because not only do you have parents who are amazing advocates and passionate about loving you, but actually had the resources, because our mental health system in this country is broken. Michigan is its own issue. And Jaden, you and I know half these lawmakers. We need to call them and get some shit changed. I'm just telling you immediately, because there is, that could be a whole other episode about that. But I do know that most of the time when a parent or a loved one, a spouse, has somebody in crisis in their home, whether that's child, cousin, grandchild, spouse, whatever, parent, you have no clue where to start. There's like no, like, what do we do? Or, oh, wait, you can't do that because we have to go to court, and I don't have power of attorney, and I can't make them take medication, and wait, what hospital? And then, oh, the hospital will do a 24-hour hold, and then they release them, and they're tearing my house up. Like, there's so much stuff, and there's no, like, I feel like there should just be like a simple flyer out there. Like, here are the 20 steps you take, and here are the list of resources. Like, nobody gives you a handbook on this.
That would definitely be nice.
Maybe we need to work on a handbook together. I don't know. But I do know that having not only your mom, but also the clinicians who are friends with her in her life and her 20 plus years of experience in the mental health field, you literally had an advantage that many young people don't have. because their parents don't know like what to do.
Mhm.
And they just trust any old doctor at the hospital, no offense, like at the ER, who don't know shit about mental health. Like, no offense. So it's I feel like I my heart breaks that you kind of have had to go through this, but the silver lining, Jason talks about that in his show Close to the Heart all the time, is I'm so thankful that you were surrounded by people who were educated, knew how to get resources, and love you unequivocally to go with you through that, you know, and to never waver. So can you, if you don't mind sharing with me a little bit, so the you wrote all this stuff while you were, you know, throughout your experiences, but what inspired you to go, okay, I'm going to pull all this together and make this a book, like, and then publish it, and like, what inspired you to do that?
Well, about halfway through, like I said, I wrote these all while listening to music and had inspiration for other books. I wrote them like that. And then about halfway through my writings, I was like, this could be something. Like, I could share this with people. I could make people feel like they're not alone. So I guess just I wanted to publish it so that people could know my story and know that they're not alone.
Hey, then. Sorry, I'm getting all mushy over here. So let me ask this: how are you doing now? How are you feeling now? I know school just started back for you, and after everything you've been through over the last, you know, from the age of 10 to now, like you're 16, that's 6 years. That's a long journey. You know, that's a lot of your childhood is been, I don't want to say taken from you, but it's been a different experience than most children go through from 10 to 16. How are you feeling today? How are you doing now?
Today I'm doing great. I've been on the medication that I'm on for about a year because I finally found the right regimen, which, may I just say, was awful. I've been trying medication since I was 11, and we did a genocide test at residential, which is like, it tells you what meds work for you. And I'm in the 1% that most meds don't work for. I'm in the 1% of the population where every med that I tried won't work for me. So I'm finally on the right medication. I'm doing hormone therapy because of stuff, but that's been helping a lot. I'm on birth control. It's been managing my emotions a lot. I'm doing a lot better.
I'm so happy to hear that. Well, I just literally got to spend a piece, like, you shared a little day of your birthday with me and my family, and we went on a weird wild trip to thrift stores and Kroger sushi. It was very fancy, let me tell you. But I was so excited to just spend that time with you, and I mean, I'm so happy to see you thriving and really using, you know, the importance of your skills and therapy and stuff. And like, I think you are a lived example, and that's really why I wanted to have you on the show, not only to talk about your book, because I thought it was so powerful, but for young people out there, and for parents of young people too, to know that there is hope. There is something on the other side of this, and it is not a quick fix, and it is not 6 weeks. You're going to have an answer and a pill to fix it. It's hard work. It's really hard, and it's not just hard on you. It's it's hard on your family. Your family has to change. The language has to change. The way you communicate has to change. And that's a lot. And I'm happy to see you. I'm just happy to see you being where you are in this moment together. So, can I go to that a little bit? Can you talk about the importance of having a family support? Because even though these are completely different topics, Jaden mentioned earlier, like, you know, that was more about identity and orientation, but you also use they, them pronouns. Your parents are supportive of you in this way, but what is the like, how important is it to you, or how much did it mean, or was it a part of your therapy and your healing to have the support of your parents throughout this process?
I will definitely say that having someone who works in mental health is extremely helpful, but not everyone has that. So it's extremely important to have support, because you can't make it alone. No one can. I've tried. It's pretty impossible. you need help, you can't do it alone. You can't hospitalize yourself. You can't do anything. You can't get medication. It's just a lot harder if you're doing it without help.
Do you have things that are therapeutic to you now besides, I mean, you said like, you know, your medication's right, you're on hormones, and, you know, I'm assuming you're probably in some form of ongoing therapy, which I am an advocate that everyone needs to have a therapist. Just to have someone to process things with. But like, are you finding joy in things you didn't have before, like, or finding new hobbies or things that are enriching to you now that you feel are helpful with your, you know, with maintaining what you have accomplished?
Reading, definitely reading. Reading just helps you kind of escape.
As a library board member, I love that answer. I'm just like,
reading and like just remembering where you've come from.
Oh, I love you. Did I say that already?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you. I want to ask actually you and Jaden, even though these were kind of like two completely different conversations. One, do either of you have a question for each other based on anything that you said? I'm just curious. If not, it's fine. I just thought I'd give you the floor to do that if you wanted.
I don't think so.
Fine. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you. So I do want to ask you both, and then I'm going to bring Jason in on this conversation too. Fritz, we'll start with you. If you could give advice or encourage any other young person out there, and it doesn't even have to be young people, adults are going through this shit too, like, who are struggling with mental illness, lack of support at home, depression, whatever, you know, because it's not always the same for every person. Like, what would you tell other people your age? Like, what do you think they need to hear on this subject?
That they're not alone. Like, you're never alone when you're going through this. You tend to think you are because you want to be. Like, you want to be dealing with it by yourself because you don't want to bug anyone, but there's always someone who notices. Like, there's always someone who's going to be there for you if you ask.
Thank you. Jaden, what about you? Like, whether it could be anything. Like, you're 18 years old. There's a lot of 18-year-old kids on that campus that are out there either excited for their college life or they're escaping their home life, and they get to just be kind of like free and independent for the first time. You know what I mean? And kind of coming from I've mentioned this on the show before. I'm from Houston. It was a hugely diverse city. It was a blessing to grow up where I grew up. It's weird how white Michigan is. Like, I'm sorry to say that, but it's so true. So when you go off to Ann Arbor or Lansing or, you know, any college campus, you're getting people from all over the state, the tri-state area, the world even. You're finally, I think for some people, they're like exposed to diversity truly for the first time on a college campus. And I think that is really important, actually. But now that you're there and you've been through what you've been through, and the senior class of Adams Rochester High School and the kids that you're meeting now, like the young people, do you have anything to say? Do you have any pearls of wisdom?
Yeah, and this is something where I think it fits the most because you mentioned college, is that, you know, they always say, you know, your first week of move-in, and of course when you enter campus, is just to get involved and just be out there. You know, and this, of course, overlaps with a lot of the work I've done, which is, you know, just do it. Take the biggest risks you will ever take in your life. Because when I first started doing my work, I'm going to actually mention a little bit, you know, how I became GSA president. Because I'm not sure if I've ever told you this story before. It was my start of my junior year 2 years ago. And the GSA, because it was after COVID, the GSA sort of died down where there was no one taking over the club, and it was basically extinct and non-existent. And I emailed the advisor of the GSA, who I'm still good friends with, who is an English teacher at Adams, and she was like, well, we have an intro meeting. I'm setting one up right now. We don't really have many people, but I'm assuming there are going to be people to come who are going to come to this meeting. So I went to that meeting, and the craziest part of that meeting was that no one showed up. It was just me and the advisor. We stared at each other for 30 minutes straight, and at that time, I made one of the craziest decisions of my life, which was I'll volunteer to be GSA president. I don't know how to do this. I'm new to all of this. I just came out like a few months ago, and this is my junior year. I need to be focusing on the SAT soon. I have college applications the next year. So it was one of the most rewarding decisions, because that decision really was the pinnacle, the point where I got into activism and I got into making change for our communities. So, with my point being though is really just, take bold risks, and and also when you're taking those bold risks as well, don't be afraid to make mistakes as well, because you are going to make a billion mistakes. Like, we as humans, we don't want to make mistakes. It's going to happen a lot. These last 2 years especially, the amount of mistakes I've made through either something I did with an organization where that didn't work, or sometimes I'll make a slip up as someone who's leading our meetings. For example, one of the biggest mistakes I made, and I'm so aware of this to this day, is that I screwed up everyone's pronouns at one of our first meetings as GSA president, and it was not something I wished was happening. It was not intentional, but it was just because I was still so new to all of it that I was just screwing everything up. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes, and it doesn't have to necessarily be about activism or meeting stuff. It just anything in life, you are always gonna make mistakes. So just own your mistakes, just keep going, learn from them, and like I said, just take risks. And sometimes, yes, you don't take risks every second, because that can be really anxious. And it's not like you do crazy things every day, but once in a while, really do step out of your comfort zone, because for anything, that decision could be life changing. And I know for me, when I just randomly said, I'll be the president of the GSA, I don't know how this is going to go, that decision changed my life forever. So that is my advice to anyone, especially, and I think that pertains to, of course, not just young people, but just to adults in general, and all individuals.
Hey, that's how I was just minding my own damn business one day, and then I was leading a march. I was like, what? And now all of a sudden people are like, call her. I'm like, why? it's when you take those risks, you just never know. So I am curious real quick too, before we bring Jason onto this. Fritz, Jason, you're in school, and I would like to say, hey, what do you want to do? Like, what are you going to go to school for? What do you want to do? And you might do that, but I can tell you my daughter was a brainiac, 4.0, straight A, knew what she wanted to do her whole life. Ended up with a totally different degree. Now she's going back for her master's with a different degree. Like, life changes, people change. You know what I mean? So I will be excited to see where your journey goes throughout your college career. But Fritz, I am curious for you, are you a junior this year? Junior in high school?
Yeah.
So do you have any do you have any idea, like, now with everything, like, because it is true, a lot of people who struggle with mental health end up going into the field because they want to, like, I noticed that when I worked for Rose Hill. I was like, wow, like, I had no clue this was such a thing. But it's because you have such a lived experience and an empathy for people. You want to be able to help. Like, you want to be able to connect with others that like you can really say what they're going through. Do you feel motivated to do that, or do you have other aspirations to be a writer? Like, what do you see for yourself in the future?
Well, actually, starting Tuesday next week, I'm going to be going to Health Sciences OSTC, which is like a college campus.
I know all about OSTC. I know it. I love it.
I'm doing health sciences. I'm going to learn medical skills, and I'm going to get certified. I can become a medical assistant. My dream is to work in emergency medicine.
Good for you. I'll probably need you. I'm in an ER pretty regularly. I'll find you. You can be my private doctor. I'm excited. You're going to love OSTC. Madison, my oldest daughter, it was life-changing for her because it's different than just sitting in a classroom all day long. Like, it's very interactive. It's like going to a trade school, but in high school. Like, it's so amazing.
Yeah.
Jaden, what are you currently going to school for? Like, what is your initial degree goal?
Yeah, and I think it's crazy when I tell people this because, it is so different from a lot of things I've been doing. But I'm currently, right now, my intended major right now is biomedical laboratory science. So it is, of course, a STEM route. It is, of course, a full U-turn from a lot of the work I do, but it is something where I am currently studying, and, all my classes right now are all science-related classes. But yeah, that is what I'm currently aiming for.
That's okay. And you know what? Jason, did you hear him earlier? They said something about taking those risks, and I'm like, oh, kind of like episode 2, getting out of your bubble. Like, I felt so many like parallels to so many things we've already been talking about. But I will say this to both of you: your gender identity or your orientation, your mental health, your activism, your families, all of it. None of it defines, like Jaden just said, like, you might be surprised to know, well, I'm not surprised. I know all kinds of lawyers and doctors and accountants who are, at the Phil Hart dinner. Like, they're doing their thing, but they also have to pay the bills. You know what I mean? So that they can do the work they're passionate about. So I'm never surprised to hear what young people are setting off to do with their future and stuff. So I love you both, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so thankful that you shared your time, which is valuable, with us and your stories today and being vulnerable in that. So, Jason, have we wowed you with more of my friends?
Each and every time
it's funny to me.
Each and every time you do this, you tell me, because I don't, you let me kind of know, well, I'm kind of leaning towards this week, but I don't really have an itinerary as to where we're going with any particular episode. Like you said at the beginning, I'm here pushing buttons, right? But each and every time you bring people onto your show, I sit here and I am mesmerized and I am wowed. And it happens a lot more. It attacks a different level with me when we're talking with young people. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have here. We have 2 extraordinary young people here. And you may have noticed during your individual conversations, I've been sitting here writing notes because there were things I wanted to touch on, things I wanted to elaborate on. Jaden, I'll start with you. Your poise, your delivery, your aura, all of it leads me to believe that your name is going to be very prominently featured in the communities in which you are a part of. Not just locally, but I have a feeling, my friend, your star is going to grow and you are going to become a powerhouse. There is no doubt in my mind. And I appreciate the fact that you saw needs in your community and you said it. You didn't even know what the hell you were supposed to do. You were just going to go do the damn thing. And that is one of the most impressive, traits anybody could ever have from my perspective, right? Fritz, your story resonates with me for a number of different reasons. And the thing that really puts you on my radar is the fact that you are a published author. And not just any kind of book. This is not a nonfiction because, look, full disclosure and sidebar, I had aspirations of becoming a published author. I wrote children's books. I didn't get them published, but I have a handful of them written because I had an interest in getting things done like that. You did. And it's not based on a work of fiction. This is your life that you put on full display for literally the entire world. Now, with both of you, I have one word. It's courage. Both of you are among the most courageous people I have ever had the privilege, and that's what this is, of the privilege of listening to for the last hour, 15, hour, 20 minutes, or however long it's been. Both of you are on your own journeys. but there's so many parallels and similarities here. But I can put you both under the umbrella of courage. And I am very hopeful and I'm very optimistic for your futures individually and the impact that you will make. It's not a question of if, you will make on other people, either directly or indirectly. You guys are doing amazing things. And I just hope for, because anybody who knows, and like I can speak on this until the cows come home. Anytime you start to embark on your own journey, you are going to get not a goat cult.
These young people don't know about the goat cult yet.
I know,
we haven't taken them that far. Sorry,
we'll
carry on.
We'll have to educate them later on down the line. But the fact of the matter is you both are you're doing amazing things. And we're just now starting to scratch the surface, especially because you guys are just now figuring out what the hell you're going to do. And please, for somebody that knows firsthand, when you embark on something that means something to you, you are going to encounter obstacles. You're going to encounter roadblocks. You're going to encounter people and things that are trying to derail you. Do not let that happen. Do not let other influences and that is inspired and motivated by ignorance more often than not to derail you from where you want to be and for what you want to be. You are good enough. You are more than good enough. And literally the whole world is yours for the taking. And I have I have a front seat to all of it. You have my support. You have the support of this network. You have the support of Kristin. We are on your side. So at any time that we can do anything to help you in any way, shape, or form, we are literally a text message, phone call, email away. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jason. Hey, oh shit, we need to take a road trip. We'll bring Fritz with us too. Let's go on up to Lansing. We'll go up there and wear green and go visit Jaden. Next year, let's do it.
I'm a Spartan at heart, man. You ain't got to tell me twice.
Let's take a road trip for I'm putting on the calendar 1 year from today.
Yes, we're doing that.
What are you guys doing now? So again, I want to thank you guys for being here today. I will, as we always do with our guests, when we go to promote, this episode on the Facebook page, we will put a link to Forever Pride and Forever Pride Action. So people can see and, they want to get more information on what you're doing, Jaden. And then also we will be having a link where you can go on Amazon. And Jason, I am going to gift you, I'm going to buy you one and I'm going to gift it to you, a copy of this book because
looking forward to it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And it is called Dreams of a Better Life. And we'll have the Amazon link up on the page as well. So you can buy this book. Do you know, Fritz, I don't see it say on the back, like, no way this isn't super expensive, not super cheap because it's valuable and you need to get paid. What, do you know what the price is on Amazon for this book?
It's $12.49.
$12.49? That's like 2 coffees at Starbucks. Everyone needs to buy this book. Like it's good stuff. So we'll have the link for that. And more information for the organizations that Jaden is a part of, and many other friends of mine as well down in the Rochester, Michigan area. Can we give a quick shout out on the end? Because I know she's going to listen. I know they're going to listen to this episode. If they don't listen to any of them, Jaden's on, so they will listen. Let's give a shout out to Rochester School Board member, trustee Barb and Ness, who is my boo. I love her. I need to have her on because, Jaden, you don't know about the first time she and I met in public. We ended up going on a date together, a platonic date to a dinner in Detroit. I'd never met her in my life. I don't ride well in the car with people. It's very scary for me. She gets it done. She'll get you there quick. That's how we met. But anyway, she's an amazing, amazing person. And then also, Jaden, I am having a literal brain fart right now. Oh my God. Virginia. What is Virginia's wife's name?
Heidi.
You're muted. Heidi, they're
Yeah.
going to kill me. I've known them longer than you, and I'm literally that tired. I need coffee immediately.
Well, also, I
But-
know I'm gonna mention as well, also, because of course, your last episode is also with both Sky and
Sky
yeah,
and Emily Bush
so they're both in our area as well. So
and
also,
Shadia.
yeah, and Shadia, yep.
Jason knows all these folks.
Shout out to all of them.
Yeah, so I know that they love and support you, and I wish we're going to actually do a separate episode at some point with Dylan Morris, who's now just left to go off to Harvard. Another amazing young man. So anyway, that'll be another episode. We can't have everybody on at one time, or it'd be an all-day episode. So we got to break it up and get new content. But I'm very proud of both of you. I love both of you, and I think you're just both amazing humans doing amazing things. And I'm so excited to see the lives that you will change through just being yourself and doing the work you're both passionate about doing. And so I really thank you both for being on the show today. Jason, thanks for pushing those buttons.
What I'm here for, I'm not here to just be a pretty face.
And someday I'll let both of you, Jaden and Fritz, know about the goat cult. It's a whole thing. Don't worry about it for now. Focus on your positive futures. Don't worry about my cult. So anyway, thank you everyone for tuning into this week's episode of Say What, and we will see you guys next week. Have a great one.